and welcome to the Goldenrod Podcast. I'm Ben. As always, I'm joined by fellow Pokemon enthusiast Conor to bring you some of the latest and greatest Pokemon news and a few laughs along the way. This week, we're talking about the Pokemon Company attending Gamescom and speculating on what it means. And later in the episode, we'll be ranking every legendary Pokemon. As always, you can jump to a timestamp. You can jump to a topic using the timestamp in the description below.
Hey, Ben.
Conor, how are we? Yes.
Before we get started,
yes.
you've done that thing again where you've talked about the timestamps and then not sent them to me for about 3-4 weeks. And we got called out on it. We got called out on it last week. We got a comment saying, "Hey, I hate Pokemon Go, but I want to listen to the podcast. Where's my timestamps?"
I think it was off the top of my head. Was that Mika Bryant who was submitted?
Very possibly.
Comments report. Sorry. I will do better from now on. Caps on it and all that. Tisk. So Conor, how are we?
I'm doing all right, mate. Very, very busy at the moment. I am still working through the editing for the launch day event that I did for my photography business. So got 60 odd photos to edit. I have 12 left, and that's going to be the next couple of days, just flat out doing that. And it's got to the point where I put all of my mental energy that I have available to me into that. And then I finish and go, there's nothing left. So I haven't been doing the dishes. I haven't done my garden. I haven't washed my clothes. Like, that makes me sound a little bit gross. I've had somebody do it for me because that's what we do. But it's been a lot. But it's good. Feeling good about it.
Good. That's great to hear. And how did the event go then?
So we had 13 clients, 14 dogs over 12 hours. Yeah, it was a very, very long day, but phenomenal. Honestly, just such good time. Each dog was obviously very different, but I didn't have any that were scared of the flash, which is always a big positive. We did all our desensitization and stuff very successfully. I promised 1 to 5 photos per client. That was kind of because it was a bunch of free sessions to celebrate the launch of the company. And they get 1 to 5 digital files, and then they can buy prints and stuff afterwards as well if they want it. We managed to get a minimum of 4 photos per dog. And obviously we took hundreds. We took hundreds over the day, but what could actually be broken down into, yes, that is fantastic and something I will be proud to hand over. We got a minimum of 4 per client. So that. Wow. We went over and above what I was expecting there.
Fantastic. Well done. Well, fingers crossed that this does, take off, leads to something and a nice little, income as well. Always
fingers
good.
Crossed. How are you, buddy?
Fingers crossed. I'm not too bad at all, thank you very much. It's been a busy couple of weeks with work and everything else just going on. I'm in London tomorrow, so I've got a train down to London, so I need to be up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, if not earlier, which is always fun, getting on that early morning train when you are just half dead to the world. So I'm hoping a good, a cup of tea in the morning will wake me up. So
for our American audience, that was sarcasm. he didn't mean that. Yeah, it's not actually fun.
I do. No. I love being in London. I love traveling around London. I hate the busy trains, the getting up early in the morning, and then you get back from there, which is like the train is about 90 minutes long, which, where I am, that's pretty darn quick, which is great. But I know that I will get back to the home afterwards and I will be dead to the world. I will be mentally tapped out. But that's just how it is, unfortunately. However, I think both of those, conversations lead quite nicely into a question. Yeah, question.
Oh, yeah, no, that makes sense.
From Tony, who has asked something unrelated to Pokemon, but these questions are always nice every now and again. What's something that relaxes you?
Have you got an answer?
I have got a couple of answers, to be quite honest with you. It just depends on what mood I'm in. sometimes it is something as simple as just going and sitting outside in the garden for a little bit in the sun, catching the rays and just like rewinding and relaxing from the like life itself. Video games are a big relaxation thing for me. Bizarrely, even games that typically stress you out, I find that relaxing. But bizarrely, I don't know how else to explain that. It's bizarre.
You're playing Elden Ring to calm down, are you?
I yet to play that game. It's on my to play list. It's on my to play list at some point. So playing video games and recording YouTube content, which is such a finding time to do that lately is next to impossible. But when I do get around to it, I really do enjoy it. It's always good fun.
See, recording YouTube videos was fun. And I don't know if I'd ever said it was relaxing, but I think having stepped away from the YouTube scene now, I realize I wasn't dealing well with the being chronically online. That having or at least running a successful YouTube channel requires. You kind of always have to be on. You're always thinking about it. There are no days off. So stepping away from that has been super relaxing. Weirdly enough, doing these photo edits at the moment, doing cleanup. Getting the remove tool out and just cleaning up stray hairs and little flecks of spit in the beard. I know it sounds really odd, but it's just a monotonous task that you just do, and it's just repetitive, and it's nice and easy. The other one is, obviously, I meditate. I did a lot of therapy. It was very good for me, and did a lot of meditation. So when I get into a really high stress point, I have to remind myself, okay, let's stop. There is actually the chance to take 5 minutes here, go sit down, and actually just meditate. And it's wonderful. I highly recommend it. It's not as frou-frou as people may think it is. It's just taking a minute to be with yourself and be okay with it.
Yeah, and it's whatever works for you, ultimately. Meditation works for you, fantastic. I bet there are people out there that go, I've tried it, doesn't work for me. Everyone's different. So find what works for you. And I think that's the key thing, is once you find something that works for you, then it's a bit of a game changer, isn't it? Which is always nice. Let's move on to the first topic, the first proper Pokemon topic of the episode. That the Pokemon Company will be one of the lineup highlights at Gamescom. So Gamescom is taking place this year from Wednesday the 21st of August to Sunday the 25th of August. It's a trade fair is probably the best word to describe it for video games. It's held every year in Germany, specifically in I'm going to butcher this, but Kolomesse, I'm going to say. I don't know if it's right. Anyway, it's in Germany. That's all you need to know. And it's strange because Nintendo won't be attending the event, but the Pokemon Company will. Now, there are several other organizations, gaming companies that will be there alongside the Pokemon Company. So Square Enix is one that has been mentioned, Xbox, Ubisoft, and several others. Now, that's all we know at this point, unless something else has come out since, which I don't think it has.
I haven't seen anything.
No. Now, I guess the question is, what are we expecting to see? And I think that's very different to what we are hoping to see.
I don't know if it is. It's Legends, right? It's got to be Legends, because I'm not saying what else are they working on. I mean, they could announce some Unite updates. They could announce it's not going to be the TCG. And I don't think you'd go all the way to Gamescom to announce your mobile game stuff. I just don't see that happening. So it's got to be Legends. And it's August. So, what did you say? It was August the what?
So it is taking place Wednesday the 21st of August to Sunday the 20th. So it's 4 days.
So that's just after Worlds.
Now that's interesting. When does Worlds take place?
Worlds is the 17th to the 19th? 16th to the 18th.
Okay. So is this a case of the Pokemon company wants to try something new, because what you typically expect is, if we have information to announce, they host their own video. They host their own live stream video, whatever you want to call it, on YouTube. That has been the standard for quite a while with Pokemon Presents. Is this a case of actually they just want to try something new? For the longest time, since COVID, we saw these gaming events, these trade fairs, these E3 and others really struggling with attendance.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a case that some of them are starting to, spring back up, getting the attendance, getting the people in, getting the companies in. So maybe this is a case of the Pokemon company just dipping their feet in the water just to go, let's try one of these instead and see if it gains whatever we mention, whatever we talk about. Will it get the traction that we want?
It's interesting because a lot of the times you go to these kind of events because you get the press. The press are already there. They're already invested. Whereas Pokemon is such a big name that almost everybody reports on it anyway. So they can kind of announce their own videos on YouTube, as you say, and it will be announced everywhere. All the news will be all over the place in all the games magazines and stuff like that. Games magazines. Is that still a thing? Do games magazines still
Gaming
exist?
magazines? They do. Yeah, I haven't bought one since university, but
when I
they
say
still
games
exist.
magazines, I mean they're online websites now. Yeah, it's an interesting move. I have to imagine it's Legends Z2A. What we're gonna get there will be very interesting. Point is, it's gonna be one to watch either way.
Agreed. Yes, I think this is still a while. This is a month out. A lot can change between now and then. For all we know, they turn around and do, well, we're going to do a Pokemon Presents the week before, and this is just like the follow-up where we can, actually have a physical presence somewhere else. Who knows? There's a lot that can happen. One thing that we shouldn't probably overlook is that, whenever they have done any kind of presents, you get what I like to call, I guess, fluff, even though it's not. It's fluff to me of, here's the big showcase that you've been waiting for, but then here's loads of other Pokemon gaming content, which is typically Pokemon Go, Pokemon Unite, Pokemon Masters, Pokemon Cafe, Remix. Now, I can't see them going to this event and just doing the fluff, okay? The usual updates. I don't think that is enough to warrant paying money to go to this event, which makes me think it is one of two things. Like say, Pokemon Legends Z2A news of some kind, maybe a first trailer, maybe more information. The other thing it could potentially be is, remember that Pokemon trading card game they were planning to release this year? Pokemon, what was it called?
Pocket.
Pokemon Pocket. Now, do we have a release date for that? I don't think we do.
We don't yet. And it's actually, it is an interesting point because it's the Pokemon company that are going, not Game Freak.
Not Game Freak.
Because my thought initially was, maybe Game Freak are going to be announcing their other game that they're working on. Maybe we're going to see more about Bloom. But it's the Pokemon company. Interesting.
And yeah, so I think it is... I think if I had to put money on it, it's more information about Pokemon Pocket. Did you say it was?
I believe that's the name.
Yeah, I've just Googled it. Yeah. But more information about Pokemon Pocket with some of that fluff that goes around it, like I've said. And, for people that are attending, it would make sense because it's an opportunity to get first-hand, your first go on Pokemon Pocket. They will probably have mobiles, smartphones set up, and you can try it. You can play with people. You can, take part in it. And then let's not forget that we'll have various, gaming news outlets also attending, getting to try it out, getting to review it, and then reporting back. I think that's the most likely. And while I would love for Z2A to be there, which might still be the case, we're a month out from this. I think that I can't see them releasing a trailer here rather than having their own Pokemon Presents, which usually does very well.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. Um, on a similar note then, so this is just after Worlds.
Mm.
Worlds, they usually announce some level of update to the games that are competitive specific. So, for instance, when
Yep.
it was in London, we got the update about because Scarlet and Violet hadn't come out yet. We got the update about Cyclizar. There you go. I couldn't remember the name. Cyclizar, because it has the Shed Tail ability, which sounded like it could be very good competitively. Didn't end up to be the case, but that's the kind of thing they announce at Worlds is they go, here's what's going to be competitively viable. Here's what's going to shake up the meta. So we could see maybe either some new moves from Pokemon we already know. We could see a new Pokemon with a new ability. Even just a new Pokemon and its new typing. All of that will require gameplay.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'm stretching here, but I would love to see some form of gameplay at Worlds.
So just so I'm clear, we're talking about gameplay for Legends Z2A and not
Yes.
Scarlet and Violet.
Not Scarlet and
Okay,
Violet. Scarlet
right.
and Violet is done. As far as I'm concerned, Scarlet and
Agreed.
Violet is done. I may be wrong. They may give us more updates. I would be very surprised.
I also agree that it is done outside of raid events and occasional boosted shiny odds for mass outbreaks. I think that's all we're getting for that now. Moving forward, though, I think Worlds is the key here because, like you say, that it feels like there's a few things that need to get in a row, and it feels like maybe it's a Pokemon Presents followed by Worlds followed by extra information at Gamescom. It feels like that is a potential because then you've kind of got. It's just got that through line of okay, we can hit the news sites 3 times in a row, each one following the previous one, and each time we reveal a little bit more. But you don't need to reveal a lot because the second time you hit the news, the third time you hit the news, they will of course recap the previous bits of news as well. So as you can imagine, let's say they do a present a Worlds, then Gamescom. Any news outlet bringing information about Gamescom will go following on, from Worlds, following on from Pokemon Presents, where they revealed X, Y, and Z. They've now released even more information. So I think that's something we could potentially see. It would be unique. It would be something that I don't think they've ever done before, at least not in the time that I've been following Pokemon during my YouTube career. So it's gonna be really, really interesting to see what we've got, and because this is so different and unique, we can't even really
speculate on it.
Like, no, like if this was a Pokemon Presents being announced, it'd be a very different story because we've had enough presents that where we can look back and go, okay, here are the reoccurring things, the reoccurring segments, the same news or the same games that we seem to get every Pokemon Presents. With this, it's a complete curveball. I don't know what we're gonna get, and I'm very excited because of that.
Yeah. I'm just trying to have a look at what was announced at last Worlds, and it was more about Blueberry Academy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's exciting, man.
So I think that might have been the first time, like Raging Bolt and the Cobalion one was announced. I think it was the first time we saw a bunch of new moves as well.
Wow. Okay. And let's not forget, like, we're two things here. Pokemon Z2A was announced in January. It's now July. We are 6 months on from that. And, what was the other thing I was going to say? So there's that. And then, that's the other thing. Like, we have been in a dry spell for Pokemon news, for mainline Pokemon news. Like, we have every week we've been saying, send in your topics, send in your comments. Like, what is going on? What can we find out? Could this be that we're finally starting to see that news cycle ramp up? of, okay, let's start to drop those teases. Let's start to drop those hints ready for a Switch successor and the possible reveal that Pokemon Legends ZA is either, cross-platform in terms of Switch and the Switch successor, or one of the launch titles for the Switch successor. And we've speculated before, the reason we haven't had more information about Legends ZA is because it's potentially a launch title for the Switch successor, and they can't bring out anything more until Nintendo steps out first and goes, yeah, here's the Switch successor, in which case the floodgates open and all the game companies that have launched titles or are developing for that successor can then release their news. There's a lot going on here.
So it would be interesting if the reason the Pokemon company no, I was gonna say something. So if Nintendo announced the Switch 2, the Super Switch, and we'll probably do a Nintendo Direct about it, would Pokemon be part of a Nintendo Direct? Because it's not impossible. They have had Pokemon games in Nintendo Directs before, but they usually like to do their own big announcements.
Yeah. I've been following enough YouTubers for long enough to know that... I've been following enough PokeTubers on YouTube to know that whenever... I don't think I've ever seen one of their reaction videos to a Nintendo, Direct or whatever they're called, and there's a Pokemon reveal. Maybe sometimes there is a case of, here's a little bit of a snippet. But like I say, Pokemon typically just likes to do their own thing because they are big enough to be able to do that. I think that, the next Nintendo Direct we get has to reveal more information. If not, it'd just be the reveal of the Super Switch. But I just cannot see any new Pokemon news coming out until that happens, and we don't have any confirmation from Nintendo of when they are likely to bring that information out. All they came out with was that comment about it wasn't going to be revealed at the last time they did something.
So I have just double checked as well, because I try to verify all my information that I give you guys. Yes, the trailer for the Indigo Disc that announced that we were getting the starters back, that announced Raging Bolt and Iron Crown, that announced a bunch of new moves, that was premiered at Worlds. So we will, more than likely, we have to get some news. They can't just go, but Scarlet and Violet still exists. They can't. They can.
No, they can't. No, they can't. There's nothing left there. Like, don't get me wrong. The only way they announce anything for Scarlet and Violet is if they have something for the next game. So it's almost a don't.
Go on.
All I was going to say was like, as part of that fluff is by the way, there's now a raid available for insert started, legendary, mythical, whoever here. Now we're going to lead on to the main bit of news, which is Legends Z2A.
The only thing I could think is if they turned around and went full national decks.
For Scarlet and Violet. Now that would be newsworthy, because it's suddenly a case of, you can get every Pokemon in Gen 9. I can't see that happening simply because the legwork, I think, would be required.
Yeah, I agree.
But
if they were going to announce something about Scarlet and Violet at Worlds, that's the only thing I could see it being. I mean, we'd have had a DLC announcement before that. We'd have had a DLC announcement by now if we were getting another one.
Oh, agreed. Yeah. They wouldn't have left it this late. Like, they wouldn't have, because people at this point are waiting for Legends Z2A potential remake announcement or Gen 10 announcement. So the longer you leave an announcement of further DLC, unfortunately, I think you'll see a drop off of people just going, the next one's potentially just around the corner. I think I'll just wait for that. Yeah. And we've mentioned Scarlet and Violet for the most part is wrapped up. If you got the DLC, you've pretty much got an entire story and experience there. So I don't think that's the case. I still think, based on what we've said, it's a triple whammy of Worlds. Possibly it presents one of those before the other, I don't know, followed by this to kind of wrap it up.
Yeah.
And I hope so, because hopefully then we start to get into
get
the
some
news
news.
cycle. And we get some news to talk about. It's like, I can't wait. I can't wait. So excited. Anything else you want to comment on for this before we move on to the legendary Pokemon tier list?
No, I think I covered everything I wanted to say there.
Fantastic. Let's move on then. So, Conor, I assume for the YouTube viewers, you're going to throw something on screen. Boom! Oh, there it is. And if you are an audio listener, then we'll do our best to describe this as it goes on. So, in front of us, or in front of Conor, I can just see his screen, which is fantastic. I love Discord at times. Conor has various rankings from S all the way down to F. It still throws me. There's no E, but fine, whatever.
Well, this one actually did start with an S to E, but I was like, no. We go the UK grading system.
Yeah,
A, B, C, D, F.
F. An S at the top for some reason. Why is it S?
Because it's super.
Super. And then we have a load of Pokemon images that we can discuss and throw onto the board. So we're just going to go in the order that they're presented here, which I believe is release order, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yes, looks like it. Yes, okay. So we've got, by the way, we are separating out Galarian forms because they are.
Yeah, so the Galarian forms are different Pokemon. Regional forms are different Pokemon. We're not doing the Megas because it's the same Pokemon. I think we will include the fact that it can Mega Evolve and how good its Mega Evolution is in the Pokemon itself. Much in the same as when we go on to Deoxys, there's one Deoxys. Has a bunch of different forms, and that comes into it, but there's one Deoxys.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Okay, let's start with regular Articuno then. It's not Moltres, is where I'll start with that, because I don't like Moltres. But Articuno, I think, had a really unique typing when it was introduced. Ice and flying. It was probably out of the three, the most difficult one to find, and the reward for that was phenomenal of getting down to the Seafoam Islands and finding Articuno. Introduced in a generation where it should have been the definitive counter for Lance, but Dragon was busted. I don't know how viable Articuno was, but I think unfortunately, it's dropped off in the later games. It doesn't fill me with this same excitement a lot of the other legendaries do.
Yep.
So I was just going to say where I think it should be placed, but actually, let's hear from you, and then we can.
So I think it's probably one of the better birds. I think it's one of my favorites. I think it looks very majestic. Its plumage is fantastic. I love its big tuft on its front.
Yeah.
Also, I always love seeing it in the anime and seeing the ice crystals like flow off its tail. I just think it's majestic.
Yeah.
That being said, it is something I have, much in the same way as you, kind of it's lost that little bit of flavor for me. It just doesn't quite do what it used to. I think competitively it has done okay over the years. Never anything spectacular, but it has done okay. I think it's a strong B.
I'd agree.
I think
I'd agree. That's where I was going to throw it. I think there's enough there. And B isn't bad. I know there's an A and an S tier above it, but B is it's good, in my opinion. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Galarian Articuno is a step above, right?
I love it in the actual game, which is not something I can say for very many legendaries. I think legendaries have suffered over the years by not having us interact with them quite as well. But chasing Galarian Articuno having it like
Oh.
multiply itself out and surround you and spin around and try and confuse you. It shoots laser beams from its eyes. Awesome. And the fact that it doesn't even fly, it uses its psychic powers to keep it aloft, so it can just look at you like, what you doing? I don't even have to flap my wings.
How cool is that? And you know what I have to say about the Galarian Bears? I know I'm slightly jumping ahead, but none of them feel like a safe option.
No.
So I look at like Mewtwo, for example. Its Mega Evolutions feel like safe options. Charizard's Mega Evolutions feel like safe options. Like the feels like the bare minimum was required in order to get them, out of the gate. Whereas Articuno, the Galarian forms of the birds, feel like they just stripped it right back and went, right, free reign, let's reimagine these birds. And because of that, it's one of those rare occasions where I actually prefer all three of the new versions over the originals.
Yeah,
which I think is quite difficult to see. Like, the fact that it overcomes my Gen 1 nostalgia says a lot about those designs, which is why, like, Galarian Articuno, I can't decide if it's a very high A or a very low S. I'm like so close.
Well, okay, let's put it this way. Is it your favorite of the Galarian trio?
Ooh, I don't know. Galarian Zapdos is there.
There
as
it
well.
is. So it's a very high A, isn't it? It's a very high A.
It is. It's gotta be. It's so good.
Kanto Zapdos.
Love this Pokemon. It's so Gen 1 playing this. This was my out and out electric type Pokemon in Pokemon Red. When I played through that, it was on my team in Pokemon Yellow. I actually had Pikachu and Zapdos because I just couldn't decide which one I wanted because they were both phenomenal in their own regards. Its design is so striking in a game that has a lot of birds in terms of, like, you got your Pidgeot, you've got your Fearow. I'd imagine most people get to that end game content and go, oh, my bird, it's time to box that and get Zapdos, because it is such the unique typing. It's outstanding design. I think typically, and I'm speaking for a lot of people here, but Zapdos, for me at least, is the first bird you encounter because you unlock that power plant route. You go to there, and you get to the end of the power plant, you just see this sprite of a bird, and you're like, what is this? And you go to it, and it triggers the battle. It's just phenomenal. There's a lot to love about this Pokemon.
Yeah, you said that Articuno should have been your dragon answer in Gen 1. Zapdos was always my answer to Lance. Because we all know Lance is not a dragon tamer. He's a flying type Elite Four member.
Yeah.
And Zapdos basically answers every one of his Pokemon. And it also has access to Drill Peck, which is just the best flying type move. So those two things alone have always had Zapdos as my favorite of the birds. I do prefer the design of Articuno, but I always prefer playing with Zapdos.
Yes, I agree with you there. That's a great way to put it. And I think because of that, I think this edges out Articuno slightly and is a low A for me.
I agree with the low A.
Okay, good. Right, okay. I was worried that maybe my nostalgia was coming through a little bit strong then, to be honest with you.
No, I agree.
So I'm glad you agree. Okay, fantastic. Galarian Zapdos. Now, this one out of the three Galarian birds is the one that I remember because of chasing it down across Galar, which is a pain to do. I remember if that wasn't bad enough doing it once, I then had to help my daughter to get it as well. And for somebody who, I've played games a lot in my life, I like to think I'm quite good at it. And let's be honest with you, Pokemon is aimed towards the younger generation.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled so much to track down this bird. It's ridiculous. But it made me love it so much more because, like we've said in the past, it isn't a Pokemon that's just given to you. It's a Pokemon you have to work for. It's something that, for the legendaries and mythicals, that should be the case. So to see that come through and, the fact that this, despite being a flying type, isn't flying, it's running around is phenomenal. It's a great design. And it's kind of, that running around aspect did something that I, remember Dodrio doing in the anime. but they brought it to the game of this Pokemon running around. So because of that, it's a fantastic, it's fantastic design, fantastic implementation. Its typing is also really not unique because there are others in like Hawlucha, but it's a really rare typing, which makes me appreciate it a lot more.
It's an angry chocobo, and I just love I just love the fact that they went, yeah, let's make Zapdos an angry chocobo, and it's like, okay, I'm on board.
Yeah,
That's it. That's all you had to say. I'm here for it.
Yeah,
it is my favorite of the Galarian birds, and I think it's S tier. I really do.
I think it's also S tier. I will happily throw that in there. There's no arguments from me.
There you go. Original Moltres. All right, we get it. You don't like original Moltres. What's wrong with a little bit of burnt chicken?
Well, that's exactly the problem. It is just bird on fire. Like, there's nothing about it that pulls me in. And this is a game where by the time you've tracked down this is me talking about my experience in both Gen 1 games. So Yellow, I got a Charizard. Pokemon Red, I chose the Charmander. So by the time you track down the Moltres, you've already got a Charizard that you've formed that bond with, that connection with. And you look at the two and you go, a dragon. I know it's not a dragon type, but a dragon. Or, I just always call mine Kanto Fried Chicken whenever I play Pokemon, because all I see is just, unfortunately, I see Fearow that's on fire. Yeah. There's nothing that stands out about its design. It feels like a very safe option, unfortunately. But I don't know how they could have gotten around that, unfortunately. And, again, this is a design where I think, it pales in comparison to the Galarian form. But I don't know what more they could have done with this for the earlier generations, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is definitely a Pokemon that suffers for its design. I think the lore of it is very cool. The fact that when it's injured, it like throws itself into volcanoes and recovers that way. Very fun. I like, although I've not played Snap, I always like seeing it being encountered within the volcano. That's very fun. That's kind of all the positive that I can say about it. It's never been competitively viable because it's 4 times weak to rock, and Stealth Rock just ruins this thing. I feel mean if I say D.
Yeah, see, when we were talking about the rankings earlier, and C is just like, okay, it's like middle of the road. It's not good. It's not bad. I think Moltres doesn't get into that because I don't think there's enough redeeming qualities about it to push it into C. I'm looking at its sprites from the games, and they really don't do anything for me. It's suddenly bringing some nostalgia back because I can see the Pokemon Yellow sprite, and even that and its color doesn't look great. I'm looking at all these sprites, and they're just it's just a bird that's on fire, and it's really disappointing because of that. And at least Moltres and Zapdos, like, they aren't like, it's a bird that's made of ice, it's a bird that's made of electric. There's more to them than that. Whereas this feels like the safe option. Unfortunately, it suffers because of that.
So we're saying D.
So we are saying D, yes.
We're going to have to be much faster at this. You know how many legendary Pokemon there are?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. Okay, right. Galarian Moltres. This design, again, improves on it. It is phenomenal. Again, like, I think I'm looking at the shiny version of Galarian Moltres, and that is what would have made me happy for regular Moltres. There's enough changes in it that it looks really good. And again, what is it? It's dark flying, isn't it? Which is phenomenal because of just that. I know it's not as unique as the Galarian Zapdos, but it's unique enough that it can be used. And it isn't, they changed it from a flying type, which are, very oversubscribed in Pokemon. I think this is a strong B tier for me. Don't know about you.
I think it's a weak B tier because it's just It's just a poor man's Yveltal. It's red and black. It's dark flying. It's a legendary. So poor man's Yveltal.
I get it. Yeah, no. Okay.
Like it's
okay.
cool. It is an
Yeah.
upgrade from Moltres. I like what they did with it. I like that it's just out and out evil. That's very fun because we don't get a lot of straight up evil Pokemon. But
I get what you mean about the Yveltal, because like when we look at Galarian Zapdos, like there's only so many Pokemon you can compare it to, and it's better than the other fighting and flying type. You look at Articuno, Psychic Flying, it's better than the other Psychic Flying we get. Galarian Moltres, is it better than the other Dark Flying we get? Well, you've already answered that with Yveltal. Yveltal is like that Pokemon, so I get that argument, yeah.
B or C?
Low B.
I will give you low B.
B.
Fine.
Low B. Mewtwo.
Is it worth having the discussion? It just goes into S tier because
it's S tier. It's just phenomenal. It is a great design. There's a movie about it which just raises its stance even more. It's busted. It's broken, and even now it's busted and broken. It's got recovery. It can hit for multiple different typings because it can learn so many different moves. There's a reason why even now I think a lot of people enjoy getting that Mewtwo, and it's thrown into so many games because it's phenomenal.
Mewtwo taught me about racism and what it means to be alive.
Yeah.
Like that really is enough for me.
Yeah,
I think it's fantastic.
Great.
Pokemon. Are we doing the mythicals?
No, let's skip the mythicals because we haven't got a huge amount of time. Mythicals, we can do their own at some point.
Right, the beasts.
Okay.
Raikou.
The legend. Oh, this is a Pokemon I used to despise. I used to hate its design. But as I've gotten older, it's grown on me. I must admit, it's one of those Pokemon that actually I think has improved the more I've used it, but also the more I've seen it I don't think what they had in mind translated well, but I now understand a lot more about what they were going for. With that mane on its back being a bit like a cloud, its tail being a bit like a thunderbolt from the clouds because it's the electric legendary beast. So saying all that though, I still think it's a bit of an ugly doggo.
Well, it's a cat. It's a saber-tooth tiger, but yes.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow, okay.
I agree with you. It's a bit awkward, isn't it? I think that's probably the way to describe it. There, as you say, there's some nice design elements going on, but especially sat next to the other two, it's not great.
No, it's not. Again, looking at the sprites, it's one of those strange mons where I don't think it translated very well to full 3D either. I think it looked a lot better as a sprite in Gen 3, Gen 4.
I think Gen 2 they tried to do a lot of face-on shots, didn't they? You see it from the front and it just doesn't work.
It doesn't work, unfortunately. And the back sprites aren't any better. I think this is one of those Pokemon where, I think every collection of Pokemon has the weakest one. This is the weakest one for me, a bit like the Moltres was.
So it's going into...
Okay. I think there's enough uniqueness in it that it goes into C. It's not a strong C, but there's enough there.
So I agree with the C, and I think the reason is because when I picked up a Raikou, because I caught one, it was one of the only beasts I actually caught during one of my first playthroughs. It was great, because electric Pokemon are just great.
Yeah, they are.
So it was the first time I had a reason to not have an Ampharos on my team, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It's really fast, hits hard, love it.
Yep. Entei. Oh, so I still have not seen that second movie.
Missing out.
Third movie. I have been told that I'm missing out. It's on my to watch list at some point.
Watch it with your daughter.
I want to
watch it with your daughter and cry.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Because I'm trying to remember. Is it the real Entei or is it the unknown doing some shenanigans?
It's the unknown.
That's it. Yes. So yeah, the fact that it's featured heavily in a movie is gives it credit. Its design is phenomenal. This thing, it's really annoying actually because it could have been a box art mon. Why they chose Suicune over this, I'll never know, because I think this has the more striking, powerful Pokemon design. It's really unique. It's just a phenomenal design that I actually love, and a credit to all three of these legendary beasts. Like the tracking, like having to track them down while frustrating. We need to give them credit for that as well. For me, this is low A, high B for me.
It's probably a high B. I used to really like Entei. As it's gone on, I've grown less fond of it. Like, its overlong sideburns kind of throw me off nowadays. But I love its tail.
Okay.
I love the smoky tail that it has. I think that's a fantastic bit of design. And its face phenomenal. Is fantastic colors. So B tier. Yeah. We'll go with that. Suicune.
Okay.
So you think Suicune's overrated? Is that what you said?
I think Suicune is overrated. I that's not me saying it's bad. I just think it's overrated. I think that, unfortunately, maybe that's just overexposure to it. The Pokemon Company, Pokemon Crystal, and then, when we were watching the anime, how many times was Suicune seems to be featured in it over the other legendary beasts? And maybe that's part of the reason. I think it does have a unique design. I must admit, I do like the flowing nature of water that they implement, especially in the anime, where even when it's stationary, you've got those. Is it the tail that flows?
So. It's feelers.
I think so. Yeah, I've never quite looked at actually where those things like end and where they begin. And then anyway, so you've got that, and from what I can see here, it does look like a tail. And then it's flowing mane as well. It is for actually, you know what? The more I talk about this, the more I'm coming around on actually, you know what? Maybe it's not overrated. I do like its design. I wish they'd have been a bit braver with the colors, personally. I think,
okay.
Yeah, I think they should have made it more vibrant. Like, I look at the blue on the shiny version, so the purple mane becomes like a really deep, dark blue, like an ocean, and I wish that had been the color of its body, to be quite honest with you. A bit like Kyogre's blue color, and then have that alongside maybe some white. I think that would have gone really well. But overall, for me, I think there's enough here to get into B tier.
I think it's a relatively strong B. I like Suicune, and I'm a fan of teal. So any Pokemon that's ever teal, I'm gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, happy, fantastic.
Lugia.
Okay, Lugia. Oh, where to begin with Lugia? I'll let you start because I think you've got a lot more history of Lugia.
So,
than
Pokemon
me.
the movie 2000 is my favorite Pokemon movie of all time. Lugia is obviously the king of the sea. I think it's a very cool Pokemon. I love the history of it, not its lore, the actual history of its creation, how it was created by the writer of the show rather than any of the game designers. I love what it's based on. I'm still not the biggest fan of it being a psychic type, but I get it. I think its design's very cool, minus the hands.
The hands are weird.
The hands are weird.
The hands are weird. They are hands. You can't look at them and go, the feathers. They are. They're massive hands on this thing. It's just weird.
But I love the spines on its back. I love how they fold down and things like that. I think it was a great Pokemon to introduce us into. What was the show we watched? Pokemon Horror? No,
Pokemon Journeys?
Journeys, yeah. When Ash and Go ride on Lugia, I think that was a fantastic way of doing that. Considering Ho-Oh was introduced in the very first episode of the anime, I still think it gets outshone by Lugia to this day.
Oh, I agree. It is, it's not very often that I look at, a generation where they implement two games and go, it should have been one. It should have just been Lugia on that box art, unfortunately.
Which is ironic because it was only going to be Ho-Oh.
Yeah, Lugia was like a last-minute addition, which is why Ho-Oh has all this backstory in the original Gen 2 games, and Lugia doesn't really have a lot.
No, it gets it becomes the trio master of the birds kind of just by default, it just gets that slapped onto it because of the movie.
Yeah. Which again is strange because I don't see how this is. I just don't see the connection between the 3 legendary birds and Lugia as kind of the de facto leader of them. There's nothing about it that makes me think it should overpower the other 3, especially when 2 of them are have super effective typings against Lugia. It's bizarre. But saying all that, I think that how to word this? You could lower it in the rankings because maybe it doesn't have the same it doesn't have the backstory that it deserves in the games. Is what I'm trying to get at. And I think that retroactively they've added that in anime, movies, and other media, which then drags it back up. I think that I don't think there's enough with Lugia to get into S tier, but it should be. That's the thing that annoys me.
So it's a strong
A. It should be in there. It's a strong A, but it should be an S tier. But that's not on Lugia. That is on Game Freak, unfortunately.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Ho-Oh, then. Again, first legendary Pokemon we were ever introduced to, really.
Yeah. So, you know what? You know how I mentioned earlier about Moltres' design being, like, really just lackluster? Ho-Oh, it's annoying that Ho-Oh is fire flying because instantly you just compare it to, well, what are the other flying Pokemon we've had? Charizard and Moltres. Now, if this had been in Generation 1, it would have made that decision of boxing Charizard for Ho-Oh a lot more difficult, to be honest with you, because its design is so striking. I look at it and I know it's a fire type without actually, needing to look into its stats, which again is annoying because, this kind of feels like, maybe this one should have been the psychic flying type. There's something about its design that lends that to me. And I just think it's a striking design with a beautiful backstory. You have to give it bonus points for the fact that I think back to when you encounter it in the remakes and just you're going through GlitchxCity. It's a beautiful city. You go up through the burnt tower, you get to the top, and it just descends down. It's actually beautiful. And I just think this, again, I think there's more than enough there to put it into A tier. I just don't think there's enough for S tier, unfortunately.
I'm kind of there with you. I mean, the fact that you brought up GlitchxCity, I've made it no secret that I love GlitchxCity. And I play Gold. Like, I don't play Pokemon Silver. Even though I prefer Lugia to Ho-Oh. I think, I would argue I prefer Lugia to Ho-Oh. I refuse to go to the Whirl Islands. I hate the Whirl Islands.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
But I've memorized at this point the route up the tower, and I would just prefer to be in GlitchxCity. And it makes so much more sense in the remakes to have the Kimono Girls introduce you to Ho-Oh in their hometown. Of course, that's where they are. That's what that makes so much sense. The story about the legendary beast and how Ho-Oh revived them. Fantastic bit of lore. Really, really great. Every time it shows up in the anime, it's special.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of its head.
So, yeah, it's weird little... So this is one of those rare Pokemon where I think the transition to 3D helped it a lot. It looks a lot better with a 3D model over the sprites.
You get a lot more aspect of its wingspan, I think, in 3D.
Yes. It doesn't lend itself nicely to those 2D sprites. It is quite ugly, if you ask me, for those 2D sprites. And the 3D just got a bump up. But again, there's not enough there to bump it into ST, which is such a shame. Because those legendary birds, I can see remakes coming out one day of some kind that elevates them even higher than they currently are.
Yeah, I agree. Skip Celebi, onto the Reggies.
Oh, the Reggies!
Okay, can I be honest here?
Good.
I have no interest in doing these one by one. They're all the same, and they're all fine. They're all C tier.
Okay.
They're fine.
You know what? the thing that I remember the most is there's two things. One from when I was younger of the hoops you had to jump through to get these. The fact that you had to translate Braille as a child, like, come on, Game Freak, what were you thinking with that? But it was quite fun to finally figure that out.
Box.
They did. But there was still some legwork in terms of so I need a Relicanth and I think a Whalmer or a Whalelord to get this one. There was a lot of legwork. But I think what's annoying is I remember that more. Sorry, I enjoyed that more and the experience of that more than actually, this is what I get for it. Yeah, which is really disappointing. The only highlight for me with these three is the anime, because hearing the first time, like the noises they make, I'm just like, what is this? What? Just like, what?
You're right. Regirock is B tier. The rest of them are C, just for un.
It's just they are hilarious, and the fact that we actually got like extras to the Reggies later on just blows my mind. But there's not enough there to elevate them out. I think they are all C. I mean, if you want to put Regirock in B, that's fine. I'm not going to argue.
I think they belong in C because they're fine. And you make a very good point that the task of getting them was more rewarding than the reward of getting them, which should never really be the case. I mean, understandably, like, well, it's actually it's all about the journey, man. You got to just enjoy it. But they're fine. They are absolutely fine, and that's what C tier is.
Absolutely fine.
Latios and Latias. Very hard to separate.
I think you just group them as one, like you've done the Reggies, because they are so similar. Outside of a few aesthetic designs, there's not really anything there. But that's part of the quirk of them.
I mean, they're so similar. Their megas are identical.
The megas are identical. I know someone will be in the comments going, actually, there is a slight difference between the two, but if there is, I've never noticed them. Now, I must admit, the idea of riding around on one of these, I love the fact that you could do that in the remakes was phenomenal with the Eon Flute. Great design for that. Like a Pokemon that really lends, we talk about ride Pokemon. These Pokemon really lend themselves to that functionality just based on their design alone. And I am glad, I don't know if, I'm sure you'll know, but I don't think the listeners know that originally the original Blaziken was split out into two Pokemon. The Blaziken we've got now and Latios. Like there is artwork of when they were like one Pokemon, and I'm glad they split them out because it works so much better as two different Pokemon. But the design is beautiful. I haven't watched the movies enough to know anything about that, but apparently Latias can turn into a girl or something.
Latias turns into a girl and gives Ash his first kiss. Yes.
Okay, that's weird. Okay, fair enough. Moving on. I think the other thing that I do like about these Pokemon, Dragon Psychic, busty typing. Oh, let's take two really strong typings. Oh, is that not good enough? Let's smush them together. Busted.
And then give them a ridiculous held item as well, which just makes them even stronger.
Oh, yes. It's just, these Pokemon are absolutely busted. I think, for me, both, I think the Megas I'm just met on.
Yeah.
I don't think there was enough of a change there. It's really unfortunate, actually, because it's one of those rare occasions where I actually think the original design is better than the Megas.
Agreed.
So I think the Mega drags it down a little bit. A nice little addition as well is the fact that, they're Dragon Psychic, but because they are flying without the flying type, they give them the levitate ability. I do enjoy that as well. Just a little shout out. For me, again, these two are, I'd say, A tier. There's a lot to love about them.
So these would have been B tier for me. They've always kind of been like, yeah, they're cool, but never really had any interest in them. But that's because I think in the original games, you couldn't really get them. You needed the Eon Pass, right?
No, you could get them in the original game. Now I need to...
I'm pretty sure you needed the Aeon Pass in order to catch them. So you couldn't actually...
that was it. So it depends on which game you got. You could get one as a roaming Pokemon based on your version. The other one, you needed the Eon ticket.
Right. Okay.
So if you had Ruby, you could get Latios, but to get Latias, you'd either need to trade or get the Eon ticket. So
okay.
You could get them.
All right. I retract that statement then. Ruby was a weird game for me. I kind of didn't really enjoy it the first time through. However, you brought up the fact that the remakes exist and you get to soar on these Pokemon, which is one of the most fantastic implementations we ever had into those games. And I think for that, I'll give them A tier. I'll give them A tier for soaring.
Ace. Fantastic. Phenomenal. And, it's one of those mechanics that I would love to see come back in a future game. Like just going up into the sky and, suddenly, actually thinking about it, I think that was the first time you ever got like a proper bird's eye view of it.
And I'd love to see it implemented into Legends as well. So, for instance, we get our normal flying Pokemon that goes around the areas, but we've already stated that we still like the idea of it being split into multiple maps. But you have one Pokemon that flies over, like goes up higher, goes over all the areas from afar, and then you come down on it. That'd be very cool.
I'd love that. Be phenomenal. Kyogre. Oh, Kyogre is such a weird one. It's one that I should love.
But it's just a big fish.
It's just a big fishy whale. Now, part of my frustration with this is, so I had Pokemon Sapphire growing up, and I chose Mudkip as the legendary Pokemon. It is my starter Pokemon. So, of course, when I get to the legendary Pokemon, suddenly I've got the same issue that I had in the early generations of, which one do I take? I ended up taking both of them, adding both of them to the team. But because of that, Kyogre barely got a shoe-in because I just default to Swampert because I just preferred it in so many different ways. And unfortunately, there are elements I do like about Kyogre's design, like the tail fins are phenomenal, beautiful. But then, like these two fins that come up off on its side, I've seen someone edit them out, and I think it looks way better with them edited out. But there's not enough. Considering this is supposed to be like the creature of the sea that
in theory the creator of the sea.
Yeah, it's just there's not enough there for me in its base design, unfortunately. Its primal version I think is a way stronger design. But I still don't think there's enough there to get it out of B tier for me.
Okay, interesting. So for me, I think you're right. There is so much to love about the origin design. I actually prefer Groudon to Kyogre, but in their origin forms, I definitely prefer Kyogre to Groudon. Simply because, Groudon's got kind of like, it's magma flowing through his body. Fine. Kyogre's got that deep sea fish bioluminescent thing going on, and I think that's very cool, and it strikes me as more of an intimidating Pokemon. I think its base form, as I said, is a big fish.
Big fish.
And the thing is, if you've ever seen Kyogre smile as well in the games, and it's got its little row of teeth, it's like and the whole front of his face, the blue and the white just separates.
That's a Pokemon that should not have been coded to ever open its mouth. That's ridiculous.
And again, it's another Pokemon with hands. Why has it got hands?
With hands.
It doesn't need hands.
It doesn't need hands. They should have fins.
I think it's a very strong B. I mean, its competitive nature alone boops
is ridiculous
all the way up. I mean, arguably, like all of the trio from Hoenn are ridiculously strong as far as competitive's concerned because Gen 6 happened. But Kyogre has always been good, especially in VGC, because it has access to the spread move, which I am forgetting what it's called now, that does all the damage depending on your health.
Origin Pulse.
Nope. All the moves depending on your health. Water Spout has access to Water Spout.
Oh, Water Spouter's busted. It's just a broken move.
So
Okay.
Yep.
Groudon. Groudon's a weird one for me because, like you've just said, you prefer, the origin form of Kyogre over. Did you say over Groudon?
yes.
Or over the primal version of Groudon?
Yes.
I'm the opposite. I prefer the primal version of Groudon over the primal version of Kyogre. And what's annoying is because growing up as a kid, that primal version of Groudon is how I imagine the Groudon should have been. Like, the fact that it's a ground type, but then becomes a ground fire type. That is what it should have been because of, the magma, the rocks, the creation of the earth and how that was all formed into one. The fact that they, then went, oh, okay, well, that makes it quad weak to Kyogre. What can we do about that? Oh, well, let's give it an ability that just nullifies water type moves. Phenomenal. I do think Groudon and Kyogre both suffer from size issues. Because obviously they're meant to be these.
They should be kaiju.
Mythological. They should be. They honestly Sutopolis. And I know that they can't do this, but it almost feels like Sutopolis should have been in the middle. And that fight is almost you pan up and you see them either side of the volcano, and you're like, oh, these things are monstrosities. We can't take them down. We need something, which is a Pokemon. I understand why they couldn't do that, because then how do you implement that into, gameplay? A Kaiju in the Elite Four, it just doesn't work, unfortunately. But I think Groudon does have a really strong design, and I'm glad that the Primal version just elevated.
Okay, do you know why the Primal version looks so much better than the original version of Groudon for me?
Go on.
It stands up. Regular Groudon has a weird hunch. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. He's like, what's going on?
Yeah, he is hunched over, unfortunately.
If you put a Zimmer frame in there, it looks like it fits.
Yeah.
So
yes,
it's also a B tier, I think.
See, I'd put it in A tier personally, just from the design aspects. Again, one of those Pokemon that when it moved from 2D to 3D got a huge go up. I've seen it multiple times in like Oras and in Sun and Moon, and just seeing its design is phenomenal. I love it. It always reminds me of that Rowlet meme. Have you seen it, where it's Rowlet versus Groudon, and Rowlet's turned its head around? It's like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm gonna die. It's phenomenal.
I haven't got time to argue. Actually, I'll give you A tier.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Although that's good, because I was just about to knock it down for its shiny, which is disgusting.
Oh, is it yellow?
Snot green.
Oh,
it's not even a good yellow. It's lime snot green is the only way to describe it. Yeah, it's disgusting. I'll let you decide where we place that.
I'll give it A. That's fine.
A. Fantastic.
Only because the next one's not really a competition. Rayquaza is S tier.
S tier all the way.
It's one of the best
phenomenal.
legendary Pokemon of all time.
Made even better with its Mega. The fact that it can Mega Evolve without a held item. Folks, like, honestly, if you didn't follow the competitive scene, apparently this thing was busted because you got the double whammy of, I can evolve, Mega Evolve, and get all those boosts, and I can still hold an item. Just broken. Implementation
and it didn't take up your
in the
Mega
game.
slot.
Yeah, it's just busted. Implementation in the game as well. Like, Gen 3 was the first generation where it felt like the legendaries really mattered and drove that story. So seeing that climax at the end of Groudon, Kyogre, Rayquaza, and just seeing this, Pokemon descend from the sky, great. And a really, really good typing as well. So, yeah.
And
phenomenal.
I love the fact that even in Emerald, where your goal is to go and meet Rayquaza, it's not to go and catch it. It's just to go wake it up. It's just like, can you come sort this out, please? And if you go back there and catch it, they haven't weakened it down for you. It's still level 70. It's like, no, I am the keeper of this. Like, if you want to use me for the Elite Four, go on, but I'm not bringing myself down to your level just because I'm the box art on this one. I love that.
I love it. Yeah, it's such a great implementation.
We can't do Giarchi. We can't do Deoxys. Brings us
No.
on to Gen 4.
We can... Gen 4 and the Lake
elves.
Guardians.
Yeah.
The elves. I
don't know if they are elves. I've always called them elves because it starts with as elf, and I just always called them the elves for that
actually,
reason.
yeah, I get that. In a generation full of great legendary Pokemon, in designs and typings and everything, why were these three brought in? I don't understand why they were brought in. They are lackluster in typing, design, ability, moveset.
There doesn't need to be three of them.
No, there doesn't. And again, this feels to me like, okay, in the last generation we had a trio. Well, we've had a trio in every generation. Oh, we need a trio for this one. Okay, let's try something new. They're all the same typing, and they are all slightly related in terms of design. I just like these three as a group. I think for me, they're our first F tier. And I know that we got a little bit of character to them in Legends Arceus, which was quite nice. But I don't think that's enough to drag them out for the same reason that the gimmick for the Reggies wasn't enough to elevate them.
They are a little bit of a MacGuffin in Diamond and Pearl, aren't they? They are just a thing that Cyrus needs in order to create the red chain. Yeah. I think I will throw them to F tier. On a side note, which has nothing to do with these Pokemon, Deoxys was originally a mythical Pokemon. It is technically now available in a mainline game without any extras. You can catch
Which
it.
Which mainline game is that? In what?
In the remakes.
Oh, you can!
Because you have the Delta story.
Yes.
Is Deoxys technically a legendary now? How do we break this down?
For time constraints, I'm going to say mythical.
Okay. Dialga then.
Oh boy. Oh my lord. Strong design. Absolutely phenomenal. Something that has grown on me over time. Again, in a series where Dragon is overpowered, this thing just stands above. Like, these two typings combined makes it a defensive powerhouse. And I think again, a Pokemon that benefits from being so front and center in its story as well. I just think there's a lot to love about this, and it's definitely. I actually think this might be an S tier.
I think it might be S. I think being the god of time kind of just elevates anything. As you say, it's a very, very cool design. It's definitely, I prefer it to Palkia a lot. We'll get on to Palkia in a minute. I think it's very strong. I think, what was it? We didn't get Origin Form Dialga. There was one in the Mystery Dungeon. There was one in a Mystery Dungeon that was like Primal Dialga.
Primal. Oh, yes, I've got it here. It looks phenomenal. I love
very,
it.
Very cool. It's always fun to see in the anime and in the movies and things like that. I just think, I agree. It's S tier. Palkia, on the other hand, it's got the weird hunch thing going again that crowd on.
It has. They seem to like that hunch, don't they? So, there's something about each of these legendary Pokemon that call to you. For me, it's the typing. Water Dragon is such a great typing in terms of offensive powerhouse, but also can't really be hit by a lot, especially pre-Gen 6, where basically it was invincible. Nothing could really hit it for super effective damage outside of other dragons. But its design, unfortunately, I think it's just very lackluster for something that should be. It's got these two typings and yet doesn't feel strong enough for either of them.
Yeah.
It doesn't
there's a lot of elements going on in the design, and none of them really seem to synergize properly to give off what it's supposed to be.
Agreed. And unfortunately, if we'd have gone Dialga A, I think there's enough in its origin form to elevate it to S. The origin form for Palkia, for me, lowers it. I think
the origin form of both of them lower it. I think the origin forms are
really?
horrendous.
Okay, to see the Dalga one's grown on, but the Palkia one has not. So I think it's a C, only because I think that despite its design not being as what it could have been, it's still unique enough that it doesn't drop down to D like Moltres, for example.
See, now I think it's actually a B, and the reason is, I apologize if you can hear my dog squeaking in the background. The reason is because it has always been terrifying to run into. If you ever played a randomizer Nuzlocke and you see a Palkia, you're done.
Game over.
For that,
Game over.
I've always appreciated it, and I think I will give it a B tier for that.
Okay, that's fine. You know what? You are absolutely right on that. There have been many times I've run into a Palkia and just it's panic stations. Like, how do I shut this thing down? You can't. You are losing something to it. Heatran. I love its typing. Fire Steel, phenomenal. I get it. Design, it's just an ugly slug with legs.
Yep.
I'm not a fan of its design. Its design is horrible. There's something that should have been Fire Steel. I think it should have been something similar to Malmetal. You know, that liquidy metal flowing movement. What we got here is, I just don't think it works, unfortunately.
The thing is, I find this one hard because it's a legendary and Volcarona isn't.
Yeah.
And that kind of is what it is for me. I think it's a D tier because it kind of feels like it shouldn't be a legendary. It's just not special enough.
No, I mean, if you'd have told me that this, you know, is part of either the Durant or whatever the Anteater Pokemon family, I would have gone, okay, right, yeah. There's nothing about it that screams legendary.
Yeah. D tier?
D tier.
Right then. Regigigas? Regigigas is a legendary, isn't it?
It is a strange legendary at that. Considering it's part of the Reggie family, it doesn't feel like it is. Do you agree with me? It's supposed to, you know, move continents and all this, and yet I look at it and it doesn't scream Reggie to me, and I don't know how to explain it. It's the fact that its design is so unique compared to the other Reggies. I think that's the problem with.
See, I kind of really like its design. It reminds me a lot every time I see it of. You ever seen? Is it Castle in the Sky?
No, I haven't.
The Ghibli movie. So there's giant robots in that, which are part of this ancient civilization, and they are covered in moss because they're so ancient. And that's what Regigigas kind of reminds me of. And I feel like that's the design element they were going for, is this ancient being that has become part of the earth. It moved the earth itself. I think the problem with Regigigas is it comes down to size again. Same as you had with Kyogre and Groudon. I think we see it once in the anime, it Gigantamaxes and then disappears. That's kind of how Regigigas should feel, is this behemoth, this titan. I think it's better than the other Reggies. I think it's does its ability bring it down? Does its ability just bring it down?
The problem with, and this is why I think they could have gotten away with making it so monumentally big, because no one's ever going to use it because of its ability. So for those who don't know, it's got slow start, so it takes 5 turns to basically get the stats that it should have. You know, and I think that because of that, it's just not viable for the games and playing the games. The fact that Legends Arceus stripped out all of the abilities except for Regigigas says a lot about that Pokemon. It would be busted without that, but because of that, it's unusable really outside of randomizers.
I'm gonna correct you slightly and say that Cherubi kind of has its ability as well.
Oh yes.
Again, but you're right. It took out all the abilities except from slow start, and I think it does drag it down. I was gonna give it B because I prefer it to the other Titans, but I think it's fine. It's a cool concept. Poor execution.
Yeah, I think, you know what? High C. Put it in front of Raikou. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just putting these in the order we come up with them. We can.
Okay, fair enough.
We will come back to this later and reorder them.
We will. Okay. Right. Up next, Giratina. Yeah, Giratina.
I think this is
Right.
S tier. I think because of Legends Arceus, I think it gives us the best battle we have ever had in Pokemon.
Oh yeah.
I think the Origin World, not the Origin World. What's the dimension called?
I should know this. It's something dimension.
Lost Zone, not the Lost Zone.
Space time. No. I can't remember. I should know this.
The other world that you go to. Anyway, that's
Distortion
that's
Zone. Distortion
Realm.
Distortion.
Yeah. That's one of the coolest areas ever introduced into Pokemon, and it's there simply to go and meet Giratina.
Yeah.
Yes, the Distortion World. That's it.
Yeah. And I think this
Giratina's
is
S tier because of that.
I agree for multiple reasons. Its design is phenomenal. Like, how do you have a Pokemon that just inspires fear and dread from the look of it? Well, not only have you done it once, you've done it twice because it's got its origin and its altered form. Again, like you, Legends Arceus, that first time you battle, you have one, and then it just like slows down. Its eyes go around like this. Is phenomenal, absolutely fantastic. There's a lot to love about it. It's again a really good typing as well. It's just phenomenal.
It's this typing that always takes me by surprise as well. I always imagine it being Dark type. Weirdly enough, I always imagine this one being Dark type and Darkrai being Ghost type.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. Yeah,
but they're the other way around. Ghost Dragon. I'm here for it. I think it's great.
Yeah. And you know what is really annoying? If they'd have implemented the Distortion Zone in the BDSP remakes, I think it would have, just that segment would have elevated those games in people's eyes.
I agree.
Because Giratina is such a good Pokemon. Cresselia.
I think Cresselia is
Cresselia is a legendary Pokemon. Bizarrely, it doesn't feel like it should do. It's part of the Luna duo with Darkrai. Which again doesn't feel like that should be a thing. It's bizarre. What to say about Cresselia?
It's fantastic competitively.
Yeah.
It's so bulky. It's so bulky. It just takes all the damage.
Yeah. I think, unfortunately, I would rate it higher if it had have been introduced in Gen 6 as a fairy type. Your fairy type.
Ooh, okay.
You know, part of the Luna duo. It's got that kind of aesthetic about it. I look at this and I don't see a psychic type, unfortunately. I see, Cresselia, Moon, Clefairy, Clefable, other Pokemon that have that kind of... Pardon?
Clefairy, Clefable, psychic types. They're not psychic types, are they?
They're not the fairy types. The fairy types. They got retroactively...
They're psychic types. They're psychic fairy. Clefairy and Clefable. These are ones that always confuse me.
Clefairy and Clefable are fairy types.
It was originally a normal type.
It was a normal type. It was normal. Yeah, never been psychic. They come from the moon. Cresselia, they don't come from the moon. They worship the moon. Cresselia to me feels like, if this was Gen 6 fairy type, there's a lot to love there, and it would go in A tier for me. But the fact that it's just, what do we throw this what typing do we just throw on this Pokemon? Let's throw psychic on it. It lowers it slightly for me.
Okay.
I think there's a lot I like about it, but I don't think it gets out of B tier.
Yeah, I'll give you
the fact that I like a lot about it. It would have been A if it had been, here's another fairy legendary for Gen 6.
Yeah, I like it. It's never been one that I'm like, I must go get Cresselia now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a
one. Yeah. Darkrai. This is one that feels like a mythical, not
is
a legendary.
Is it not mythical?
And
it is a mythical, isn't it?
No, it's a legendary Pokemon.
I'm starting to confuse what a.
I need to know now.
It's a mythical.
Darkrai
is a dark type mythical Pokemon. Cresselia is Darkrai's counterpart and rival, and together they form the Lunar Duo. There you go.
But again, this was a Pokemon that was available in Legends. Right, Fine. Yeah, save
It's
it for
okay.
mythical Pokemon.
There are so many of them that feel like they should be legendaries. Darkrai,
Yeah.
Arceus. Arceus is a mythical, but like it's such a key part of the story that it should just be a legendary. The fact that it even has that connection in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, where you take it to the unknown and you get to go see what's it called? Sinjo, the Sinjo ruins. And you get to go see Cynthia and stuff like that. Fantastic Pokemon. Unfortunately, we don't get to talk about it, much in the same way as Victini. So on to the Swords of Justice.
Gen 5. Oh boy. I just don't like these designs. I get what they were going for.
Cobalion's my favorite of the three. But I already said I like teal Pokemon, so
yeah, Terrakion's mine, but that's mainly because I've used it in randomizers before, and actually rock fighting is a really good typing. I think that, unfortunately, these Pokemon would have benefited from what we got in Generation 8 of that all one thing where Calyrex mounts it. I think that would have elevated these Pokemon being like Swords of Justice, but like, you know, the sword is the Pokemon that rides them. I unfortunately don't think, you know, these suffer a bit like the Regis, I think, of there's not enough between them, despite, you know, they look very different. They're just meh.
They are.
And these are Pokemon that actually, you know, got a bit of a glow up in Generation 9, which I think does elevate them. But that doesn't do anything for the originals, unfortunately. And
what's funny is I played through Black 2, and I remember running into these and just being like, oh, you're just kind of in the overworld and you're coming to see me because you knew I wouldn't go out of my way to come find you. Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's a shame, really, because their typings, very unique steel fighting, rock fighting, grass fighting, not common typings at all, and yet, you know, that isn't enough to redeem what I think are poor designs, unfortunately.
Yeah, they needed a little bit more to them, I think. I think the fact that their movie really revolves around Keldeo, who's another Pokemon I really just don't get along with.
Yeah.
I find it hard to move them out of C, even though D is what's calling me.
Yeah, I don't think there's enough to drag them down to D, unfortunately. I think there's enough, you know, uniqueness in the typings and the designs where there's enough to drag it into C. Mm-hmm. Barely, but there's enough. The genies.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so we did say we are looking at these in all their forms. So the Therian forms count as well. I will say that Thundurus especially has always been competitively viable. In fact, it used to be used as a basically hard attacking sweeper, and then one player decided to run it as for its prankster ability and just be super annoying. And because of Thundurus, the game was changed.
Oh.
Yeah. So the fact that prankster can no longer affect dark types and electric Pokemon can't be paralyzed and stuff like that, that's because of Thundurus.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Thundurus for that is pretty cool. It's pretty good. Unfortunately,
I will say, go on. Oh no, go on.
They're all the same. They're all the same, and I didn't need them to be roaming. They didn't need to be roaming either.
I quite liked that they were roaming. I think what I don't like about them is there's a few things about the design elements. One, in their genie forms, they're a bit too human-like, which weirds me out a little bit. And while, you know, now I'm looking at them, you know, they've got a similar design element, but I just don't think it's a strong design. You know, a body in the clouds with some kind of thing flowing over it. I just don't think they are good designs, unfortunately. I get what they were going for, I don't think it worked very well. I also don't like the whole genie aspect, but I don't know if that's something us fans have just given them. I don't think it is something it's ever referred to in the games. I mean, I'm just looking at the Bulbapedia and I can't see anything on there. What it says is that they're part of the forces of nature.
Yeah, I don't think they're
and
based off genies. It's more of a Japanese lore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I can't remember
Okay.
the actual names of what they're based on, but it's Japanese
Hmm.
lore, which again
And
just doesn't quite translate. We see man
No.
coming out of a cloud and we think Robin Williams. Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I think they're. I've never liked the Therian forms either. I
like two of
it's
them.
just
I like Landorus. I
Is
like
he-
Thunderous.
yeah.
I'm not a big fan
I
of
don't
Tornadus
get-
in any of its forms.
No, a torn. Yeah, they are. I sure, you know what? I shouldn't even like these. I think the one thing I do like about them is just the typings. You know, flying type, pure flying type was unheard of at this point. Electric flying is really rare, and ground flying is really rare. Outside of the typings, I actually don't like these Pokemon in terms of design. I think, you know, if you want to throw Thunderous maybe in C because of its unique ability. Am I being harsh there?
I think you're being very harsh. And again, I spoke about Thunderous competitively, and there will be people out there screaming at me going, excuse me, Landorus. Yes, I'm aware Landorus is the bane of competitive Pokemon. The thing's insane. Ground flying type
Really?
is just so good. Ground flying with Intimidate. Oh, this thing is unbelievable.
Okay.
I would actually argue, purely for competitive viability, that I would give Landorus and Thunderous B tier. And throw Tornadus in C. I could knock them down
I can
if
accept
you so
that.
wished a layer.
No, I will accept what you're going for. I can live with that. I don't despise them enough to argue, but these are. I think I'd rather take the Azalf trio than these three personally. But if over on design, not typings or abilities or anything else, but just design, yeah, I
still think they're better
miss.
designed than the Elf trio. They do nothing for me, really.
Okay, I think I think maybe everyone has that trio where they just go, no, that's not for me, and that is, you know, that's my opinion for those three, is they are not for me.
Dargans.
The what?
Dargans.
The Dargans. We love the Dargans. Oh, okay. So, which one are we starting with? Reshiram. Okay. We've had so many strong dragon designs. I think this is the first time we haven't. But I'm just going on the design aspects at this point, and I think this is where maybe dragon we start to get a bit sick of it. A, because it's overused, but also the designs maybe start to drop a little bit. Reshiram and Zekrom have always felt like the weakest dragon designs we've had. Reshiram is better than Zekrom, in my opinion. It has something about it in terms of that, you know, that majestic side, that white, like, flowingness of it. And like you say, Dragonfire, again, really unique typing. And they're good for the story. But low B for me for Reshiram. I would struggle to put it any higher than that. I don't think there's enough about it.
So much like the rest of Gen 5, these are Pokemon that have grown on me over the years. I think if you'd asked me back when the games came out, I'd have told you they were over-designed. They don't read as dragons. If this is our first fire dragon, why this? I think I can give it B. I think I can comfortably put it in. Reshiram's a B and so are the genies. Okay, no. The genies are going to come down. Genies are got to come down. Oh, okay. Genies are going to come down if this is going into B tier.
Okay. there are some redeeming elements about Reshiram. Mainly that its shiny is beautiful. Like when the rings become gold, that should have just been its default, if you ask me. And the fact that you can have that glowing element, again, phenomenal. It almost feels like that glowingness, with the fire, that should have been a bit like Quilava and Typhlosion. It should have been always on, in my opinion. I think it would have elevated it.
Zekrom. Again, one of those that when I first looked at it, I was like, oh, that's a Digimon.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. I've never said that myself, but now that you've mentioned it, yeah, I can see it.
It's a bit angular and a bit like robotic for what a Pokemon should be. That hasn't fully lent into that design, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You know what? This feels like it's only a couple of minor changes away from being a Paradoxmon, like a future Paradoxmon.
Yeah.
I can see that. Now that you've mentioned that, yeah. I think he gets points for Dragon Electric. Again, busty typing. I think that it's one of the Pokemon that I think it almost feels like the designers of Reshiram and Zekrom didn't speak to one another and just went off and did their own thing, because then you've got Kyurem over here and it doesn't feel like the trio. They don't feel like a trio of Pokemon, despite the fact that there's all supposed to be
one original
from
Pokemon.
The same Yeah, and I think what drags both Reshiram. Now that I'm thinking about it, drags all three of them down, because this, in theory, should have been the trio where you can get away with them looking very similar, because they're each like a part of that original dragon. And I think that Zekrom is the weaker of the designs. I actually think Zekrom is a C for me. You've got a Dragon Electric type and you go with the most boring design you can.
I don't know if I'd argue their designs are boring. I can't see them being boring. I will argue over designed before I'll argue boring.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. I think the way they went with the sort of black and blue highlights, I think that's a very cool idea. Blue lightning instead of yellow. Awesome, because this could have very easily become a Bumblebee and we could have been having a very different conversation. Yeah. Again, doesn't really read dragon, but not a lot of dragon Pokemon do. I still think it's B. I think if Reshiram's B, this is also B. Really, they are
okay.
They are part of the same whole. Really.
Yeah. Again, this feels to me like those blue elements should have been present just as standard.
Yes.
Because like the safe bet would have gone, well, Dragon Electric, let's keep the black color and let's go for yellow. The fact that they didn't and they went for the blue is great. How do you twist on that? Lightning. Well, lightning, you typically go for yellow. Let's go for something different. It works, but again, should have just been on as default.
Yeah, no, I agree. Kyurem. So I'm gonna make a point here. Kyurem introduced fusion into Pokemon.
Oh yeah,
which is very cool. Yes. However, if we're saying that all of these Pokemon are being commented on their alternate typings as well, then realistically, Reshiram's alternate typing is also Kyurem White. I know it's called Kyurem White, but you need Reshiram in order to do it. If it's a fusion of the two, then you need both of them, and they should both get the benefit of Kyurem White and Kyurem Black. That being said, I think those designs are horrific.
Oh, they've grown on me over time. They have grown on me, and it's really annoying because I wish I could. The fact that they are so horrific, I think, is a design choice that they went for in terms of, no, you don't get the fully fused Pokemon. The fully fused Pokemon is what it should look like, and therefore, because you've got a half step, it is supposed to be a monstrosity because it's
kind of
not
an abomination.
What it originally was. Yeah, because Kyurem's described as the husk of the what's left over from the dragon. So I would not expect anything that is described as a husk to look majestic, beautiful. It would look like a monstrosity, in my opinion, which is why I can forgive the designs, because it actually feels like, okay, we want to go for something that is supposed to make you feel a little bit uneasy when you look at it, which is exactly what you get with those designs. It feels like a monstrosity.
It looks like Jeff Goldblum stepped into a teleporter with a fly. Yeah,
yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. It does. But for me, it works. Kyrim is one of them as well that has grown on me. I remember the first time seeing this Pokemon, just being like, "Oh, I'm not a huge fan of that." But as I've gotten older and seen it more, I'm like, "Oh, actually, they went for something very unique in this dragon design that is so hunched over that it's kind of predatory. It's kind of primal in its design of, the other dragons are all cute and friendly. You can play with them. You can have fun with them. Kyrim looks like the kind of Pokemon that if you see that, it's chasing you down. I love that design about it.
Has got that kind of T-Rex element to it. Of, as you say, it's leant over. Yeah. It's got the stubby arms. I like it. I agree. It's one of those that has grown on me over the years.
Yeah. I guess the conversation we need to have is obviously Kyrim we can place, but then what are we doing about the fusions? Like, because unlike Megas, they take 2 Pokemon into account.
I think that you have to rate Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kyurem knowing that the fusions exist.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So would you lower them then if you don't like their...
No, because I wouldn't lower them less than B. Because realistically, the thing is, if the fusions were really good, then I'd have boosted them. But if the fusions are bad, then I just don't use it. Much in the same way as I hate Origin Dialga, but I just don't use it. So I still have my basic Dialga.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't take away from the original. I think the other thing that is different than Megas is Megas are a lot easier to obtain than these fusions. Mm-hmm. These fusions are a nightmare to get. And then they're unfortunately not in the games past Gen 6, I think. Maybe Gen 7. I don't think they're in Gen 8. I might be wrong. I'm trying to remember when they turned them off. But yeah, just to like wrap up Kyrim, I don't know if you already know. I don't think you've already placed Kyrim in there. I think Kyrim, I think it's a B tier. I think it's a strong B tier.
Yeah. To get Pokemon Black and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, you must fuse Kyurem and Zekrom. Okay.
Oh, it's available in the... Okay. Ooh. Okay. But you can't put it into home, I don't think.
No,
don't know. No. Oh, that's something I want to... Sorry,
where did you want to put Kyurem?
B. B tier for me.
Sure. I like it less than the other 2 dragons, but... Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. I think we're wrapping up there because this is taking way longer than we thought. We've done all Gen 5 outside of Mythicals, right? There are no more...
No, I don't think...
Gen...
I think the rest are all Mythicals.
Malouette, Genesect.
Yeah. We were looking at doing all the legendaries. We were going to do them all in this one go. However, they kind of just get more from here. Gen 5 onwards kind of just got ridiculous. Or Gen 4 onwards, really. So we may cover this again next week. If there's loads of news, we may miss it. But we will definitely come back to this and do the rest of it.
Agreed. It's really fun to do these tier lists and just... It makes you realize just how much Pokemon there is. Whenever you do any kind of tier list, you realize just how long the series has been running for and how many games there are, and therefore how many legendaries, gym leaders, whatever you want to do, rivals, how many there is. It's ridiculous. And I think it's my fault for going, let's do a legendary tier list and not realizing just how many legendaries there is. But like Conor says, we will be back at some point with this. Maybe next week. Hopefully, though, I'm hoping that we start to get some news as we gear up to more Pokemon content.
I reckon we still got a month yet.
I do as well. So we'll probably be back next week with this. But for this week, that's the show. If you've gotten this far, you just top dollar, aren't you? Before we go, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave a review on the podcast platform of your choice. If you're watching on YouTube, then please leave a like and subscribe, as it really helps out the podcast. If you've got a comment, question, or a topic, you can reach us by leaving a comment on our podcast on YouTube, by emailing goldenrodpod@gmail.com, by leaving it on our Discord channel, by using the hashtag goldenrodpod on Twitter. Connor, where can we find you?
You can find me on my YouTube channel at Captain Fidget.
I'm Ben. You can find me as Professor Hoeing Gaming on YouTube and Professor Hoeing on Twitter. We'll be back next Friday for another week of Pokemon podcast content.
See ya!